Hi, everybody. I'm Tim Estiloz with the Spiel on Entertainment, and I'm here with the esteemed film historian and film critic. You know him from Entertainment Tonight for many years, the amazing Mr. Leonard Maltin. It is a pleasure to chat with him about his new book entitled Starstruck, My Unlikely Road to Hollywood, coming to bookstores very soon. A pleasure to chat with you, sir.
Thank you very much.
So, you have written so many books over the years, and most notably your TV movie guides. What prompted you at this point in time to write this type of book?
Well, I've been toying with the idea, and then along came the lockdown, the pandemic, and I said, well, now I've got the time, and so I dove in, and it was wonderful because it gave me something to get up for in the morning every day.
Mm-hmm.
I was very disciplined, and I worked on it steadily, and consulting with my family along the way to prod my memory.
And you've had such an amazing career in that you've done so much in the film industry, but you had an interest in this very early on at the age of 13, coming up with your own fan magazine for movies.
Well, yeah, I mean, and everyone else thought it was unusual. Except me. It just seemed like the right thing to do. And at age 13, I read about the existence of such things as fanzines. Today it would be blogs, the equivalent would be blogs or websites. And but back then it was all tangible and physical. And I used something called a mimeograph machine, which nobody in this audience of yours will ever encounter as long as they live. Mm-hmm. But it made copies before Xerox and photocopying was commonplace. And I just got into that habit of wanting to express myself whenever I got interested in something. And that's how it all began.
Well, many of us got to know you over the years, myself included, at a very young age, watching you on Entertainment Tonight. And you started on the show quite early. As my recollection goes, the first hosts were Dixie Watley and Ron Hendren, and maybe there was someone before that. Tell me what that time was like for you.
Well, it came out of the blue because I'd written a book called The Great Movie Comedians and was lucky enough to get booked as a guest on the Today Show, a plum for an author then or now. And I did the interview with Gene Shalit, their longtime film critic and entertainment reporter. And we had a very loose, lively, fun interview, good chat. Unbeknownst to me, someone at Paramount Television, this was in New York, by the way, someone at 3,000 miles away at Paramount Television here in Hollywood saw it and called the newly installed executive producer of Entertainment Tonight. He was producer number 4, I think.
Wow.
Toward the end of their first season. And he said, "You're looking for a film critic, aren't you?" And the man said, "Yes." He said, "Well, I just saw a guy on the Today Show. I think he's worth checking out." My phone rang a few days later. To make a long story short, I got hired on the strength of my audition and was still there 30 years later.
Well, what's amazing about this show and your experience is that at the time it started, we've grown used to entertainment shows, but this was very unique at the time when you started.
It was the first of its kind. There was no E! Channel. There was no Access Hollywood. There was nothing else quite like it. In fact, people in the TV industry were very skeptical. How are you going to fill a half hour every night? And who would want to see a half hour of entertainment news? It all just unrolled and unfolded. And when it was a success, it spawned many imitators.
Well, this book is fascinating in that it was a very easy but entertaining read. And you have so many anecdotes about so many screen legends, as well as some of the contemporary actors that we have today. I was truly fascinated to hear your anecdote about meeting, I guess, your favorite interview of all time, Katherine Hepburn. Tell me about that experience.
Well, I hadn't been doing interviews for ET at the time. I was doing mostly new movie reviews and an occasional feature story, but they made a deal with NBC. Katherine Hepburn had just done a made-for-TV movie for NBC. She agreed to do 2 interviews to promote it, one with the Today Show and one with ET. and they sent me to New York to do it. And so I was at her brownstone apartment on East 49th Street, right next, I think, to Stephen Sondheim, in fact. And we walked in, and there she was. And I just, started chatting with her while my crew set up.
Mm-hmm.
Small talk. She offered me soup.
That's great.
Not a big soup fan, but I wasn't going to turn that down.
Mm-hmm.
And we hit it off. And the publicist from NBC had insisted that we talk mostly about this new TV movie, which they couldn't show me. They couldn't show me a frame of that movie, yet they wanted me to talk about that mostly with this legendary star.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I didn't, because I got what few little tidbits she had to offer, and then I was off and running and talking about everything under the sun with her. She's my favorite interview because she was opinionated, colorful, and blunt.
And also, it seemed that she was so comfortable chatting with you that she even shared some thoughts about her relationship with Spencer Tracy.
She had not yet gone public talking about that long-term relationship that they had. But there was a presidential candidate named Gary Hart that year, and he had been embarrassed. In fact, it drove him out of the campaign to be photographed on a boat with some young babe. And I said something about that to Miss Hepburn, and she said, well, he was very foolish. Spencer and I never gave anybody an opportunity to take pictures of us. We never went out in public. We only ate at each other's homes or at the homes of friends.
Now, that leads me to ask, since this was one of your favorite interviews and one of your first, with all the countless interviews you've done over the years, did you ever, at least in those early stages, get nervous about somebody that you sort of, as the book says, starstruck?
All the time.
Mm-hmm.
I still do. I'm not blasé. I hope I never get blasé. And the trick is not to let it show. and so that's my little sleight of hand, is trying to act calm and collected and normal when I'm in the presence of somebody that I admire or even idolize.
Tell what it was like to chat with Elizabeth Taylor. I got the impression that she was rather guarded with letting her inner thoughts come out.
Well, yeah, she was promoting a TV movie she had done of Tennessee Williams' Sweet Bird of Youth with Mark Harmon. And we were told to expect her to be tardy. She was famous for that. She was 2 hours late to the hotel room that we had rented for the interview. But we didn't mind because we were ready for that. And I called her friend Roddy McDowell, who I knew slightly, and said, are there any subjects that she likes to talk about that I might not hit on by myself? He said, you won't have to use tricks. She's just very natural, easy to talk to. Well, she was sort of easy to talk to, but she put a big period at the end of every sentence.
Oh.
It never became a two-way conversation. But I asked her about National Velvet. She loved that horse, loved talking about that. I asked her about Father of the Bride and Spencer Tracy. She loved talking about that. And when it was over, they hadn't sent 2 cameras. I don't know what they were thinking. They'd only sent 1 camera. So I had to do the part of the job that I hated the most, which was re-asking the questions.
Ah, yes.
With an over-the-shoulder shot of her, which she was perfectly willing to do. And my director said, now, Miss Taylor, you can say anything you want. This is just to pick up Leonard's questions. And then she started teasing me. I thought, oh, that's what you want to get on camera.
And you're like, oh, why didn't she say this while on camera?
Exactly. It was still a good interview, but I was hoping for a little bit more.
I wanted to ask you, as you write reviews, and you might write a bad review about somebody, that you may have to encounter them later. And it seems that this sort of dynamic played into sort of an ongoing relationship with Burt Reynolds professionally.
Yeah, it is always awkward to have to criticize somebody and I have many stories on that topic. But for some reason, Burt Reynolds had the idea that I was out to get him, which was not true. It happens in the early 80s when we're talking about, he made some pretty poor movies like Cannonball Run 3
Yes.
and Broker Ace, films that just weren't very good. But I tried never to attack him. It was the movies I was criticizing. So the first time I ever met him was at a reception for an award show, and my crew was with me, and I said, "Can we talk to you for a minute, Burt?" He said, "Sure." And as my cameraman was hoisting his camera onto his shoulder, Burt said, "You know, I'd slug you, but there's ladies present." I looked at him. I'm no good at confrontation, but I looked him square in the eye, and I said, "I have never said an unkind word about you. Maybe about some of your movies, but never about you."
Well
He
played,
said,
sir.
"Oh, well, thank you, but it didn't work." He said, "Oh, so then it's not personal." I said, "No, it's not."
And it was hard to know with Burt Reynolds because he had a dry wit and also a bit sarcastic, so you never really knew. Would that be accurate?
That is accurate. If you've ever seen Charlie Chaplin's great film City Lights, there's a drunk a millionaire drunk who befriends him, but when he sobers up in the morning, he doesn't recognize Charlie at all. That's how I felt with Burt Reynolds. I never knew which one I was going to meet.
It seems you have a way of talking to the celebrities and getting, yes, a little bit about the movie that they're plugging, but you go a little bit deeper and get a little bit more about them as people.
Well, I'm no good at asking personal questions. That was the bane of my existence at Entertainment Tonight. They'd want me to ask that personal question, and I could never quite spit it out. And when I did, I was very hesitant and nervous, and then it showed. But if I admired somebody, I let them know that I really did like their work in this film or in this series of films. And that always seemed to warm them up because I was sincere. It wasn't a phony a ploy. It was really me talking.
Many critics have different styles in the way that they approach film criticism. How would you describe the way you approach a film to criticize it?
Well, people sometimes ask if I have a checklist, either a literal or a virtual checklist of points that I want to deal with on them. I don't. You know, I take each movie as it comes. If I'm going to see the new version of Macbeth with Denzel Washington, I'm going to be expecting more of that than I would of Scream 13. And vice versa. So I try to take each film on the basis of what it's trying to be, what it's trying to do. And then I just write what I'm thinking. I try to spill what's in my brain. I'm not trying to be a wise guy, and I'm not trying to be a smart aleck about the movie just to score points for myself as how clever I can be.
You've interviewed so many legends in the film industry, true movie star legends. And then there are also the very skilled contemporary actors. Is there a difference in the legends and that part of old Hollywood as opposed to the new Hollywood?
It's a broad generalization, but the stars who were groomed in the old studio system really were taught how to look, how to dress, how to behave in public, how to deal with the press. And they had a kind of a routine, not a routine, but they had an approach, let's call it, an approach to doing all that. And they did it willingly because they were told, this is what you do. This goes along with the stardom. Is you greet your fans, you're polite to the press, and you're even patient with dumb questions you may get. And a lot of the younger actors who have come up in recent years have oodles of talent, but they haven't had that training in some cases. Some of them a friend of mine called it toilet training. Some of them take to it, very easily, and appreciate, what it is that they've been given as actors.
Now you're getting a chance to make sort of the film critic business sort of a family business. You work with your daughter with your podcast. Tell us all about that.
Well, she does not pretend to be a film critic. And she takes great objection to that because she doesn't have any such ambitions. But what she has is she's absorbed everything that goes on in my life and my wife's life. And she still lives under the same roof as us with her husband and now with her 5-week-old child, her beautiful daughter. But she's very savvy. And so what we do mainly on our weekly podcast, Maltin on Movies, is we do interviews. And she's developed tremendous skills at that. She's a people person. She's always been highly verbal and a great people skills. And that's what people are now getting to hear.
You touch on in your book the fact that 7 years ago you were diagnosed with Parkinson's. Is that posing a great challenge for you? It seems not.
Well, if it seems not, then I'm doing my job well. It isn't stopping me from writing or talking or conducting interviews. It evidences itself in various ways, some of them very frustrating, some annoying, but it doesn't stop me from functioning. And that's the most important part. It's challenging at times.
Mm-hmm. Well, I thank you for sharing that with us in the book. It's a whenever anybody shares something like that, and I think you touch on an anecdote in your book about how somebody else shared their struggle with you and led you to be more empowered to talk about it.
Well, I got a call from a fellow I know who was writing for the AARP website, and he called me one morning to get a reaction from me about Alan Alda going public with the fact that he had Parkinson's. And so I gave him my response. And then I looked around and my wife and daughter happened to be in the room. And we sort of shrugged at each other. And I said, and I have it too. I hadn't planned to say that. And I'm not Alan Alda. I'm not, a star with decades of credits and wonderful resume like his. But I decided no reason to hide it.
Well, we're very grateful that you did share that, and you underestimate yourself. You've been in our living rooms for decades, my friend, and a welcome guest in there. My final question, we're heading into award season. We've got the Critics' Choice Awards coming up very soon. What's your take on some of the films as we head into the road to Oscar?
Well, I think it's not a very exciting road this year. I had a hard time making a 10 best list this year.
Oh.
And I don't remember when I've had so much difficulty coming up with films I thought were superior and worthy of awards. There are a handful, but not as many as I'd like.
What did you find lacking in terms of either the field, or are they just rehashing a lot of same ideas?
Well, I mean, Nightmare Alley is officially, it's a remake. It was made once before with Tyrone Power back in 1947, and that's a very good movie. But the new one made by Guillermo del Toro, I think, is terrific. And that is one of the leading pictures of the new year, just opened. And I think that Paul Thomas Anderson's Licorice Pizza,
yes,
is a real original piece of work, which I enjoyed very much. And I happen to live in the San Fernando Valley. Didn't grow up here, but as he did, but I enjoyed all the references. And so they're really good movies. Luca this year, an animated film that really knocked me out. Dune, I think, is superior. And I'm not the biggest science fiction fan, and I never read Frank Herbert's novel, but it really pulled me in to that story and kept me in its grip.
Well, it's a pleasure chatting with you, sir. We were talking about, of course, your book, Starstruck, My Unlikely Road to Hollywood. I recommend this book not only to everybody who is a film buff, but also if you're a budding journalist and you want to get into entertainment news or criticism, this is the book you've got to read rather, and see it from the cover. Leonard, it has been a pleasure chatting with you. It's been sort of a lifelong fulfillment of a partial career goal to chat with you. And I really enjoyed this.
Well, so did I, Tim, and thank you so much for all those nice words.
Oh,
They mean a lot.
It's heartfelt. We've been chatting with Mr. Leonard Maltin of Entertainment Tonight fame and so much more. He's got a new book out called Leonard Maltin Starstruck, My Unlikely Road to Hollywood. Go to the bookstore, get it, get on Amazon, get this book out there to all your friends and for yourself. Anyway, I'm Tim Estiloz with the Spiel on Entertainment. We'll see you next time.